I did not think this was going to be a good basketball game, KOC. I thought this would be the game the Celtics won by 20 points. And then game 2 would be a game like we got tonight. Instead, we get an awesome game tonight. Is that the Jaylen Brown game, or is that the, oh my God, I can't believe the Pacers choked that away game? Which is it for you?
It's the, oh my God, the Pacers choked that away game. I think for Indiana, this is the game that you had to win, because I do think Boston's going to have that 20-point victory probably in game 2. I kind of felt the same as you, that would come in game 1 after rests. Pacers just coming out from a hard-fought Knicks series, and instead we get the game that we did tonight. And I think 1:57 to go, Indiana's up 5 points, and then you see Tyrese Halliburton. He blocks Derek White from behind in that moment. And then he took a hero shot, double step back, Harden style 3-pointer, momentum taking him out of bounds. Horford on a switch against him. A really, I thought, careless hero shot. Felt like he wanted the moment instead of making the right play. And that was with 15 seconds left on the shot clock after blocking White. Then he had the turnover after that, dribbling the ball off his knee. And that just kind of, I thought, summarized the blown lead for Indiana down the stretch, the sloppy decisions that carried over into overtime. They should have won this game. The Pacers should have won tonight.
So the Halliburton play, 58 seconds left after he blocks it. They're up 3, misses. And still, there was 2 other times they should have won. I mean, first of all, you got to be able to inbound the ball up 3.
Oh, my God.
Almost the exact same spot of the Henderson steals the ball in the old Garden. Except in this case, it was Siakam tips it out of bounds and Rick Carlisle has no challenges left. But,
times have changed, huh?
I went to some dark places in that fourth quarter, KOC.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
There was a weird Tatum sequence and a lot of stuff to talk about with him tonight, but there was a weird Tatum sequence where he just was 40 feet away from the basket for a chunk of the fourth quarter. He had a wide open 3 in the final minute that was going to give them the lead that I thought was going in. He missed it. And then and you're just sitting there going,
then the rebound and the jumper as well.
Yeah, and he gets the rebound, he misses the little fall away, and you're watching it going, oh, here we go. Tomorrow is going to be Tatum's not as good as these other great young players, and we're going to have to do this whole thing. Meanwhile, Tatum was really good in overtime, and he finally hit a 3 that I got to admit I didn't 100% think was going in the that basically put the Celtics up by 4 and kind of iced the game.
Was that the 3 when, for whatever reason, the Pacers just left him completely wide open because Andrew Nembhard didn't just switch? Like also the and one kind of layup that he hit when he was on Nembhard was on him.
Yeah.
Why did the Pacers have Andrew Nembhard on Jason Tatum with the size strength disparity? I know Nesmith has fouled out of the game at that point, but to me, like, you got to put Siakam on Tatum in that situation down the stretch of that game.
On Horford.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. No,
Tatum
baffling.
finishes with 36, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 12 for 26, 10 for 12 from the free throw line, and really good defense, I thought.
Yeah.
And there was some weird strategic stuff with Joe Maz, which I know we'll go into later. But it felt like Tatum should have just been defending Siakam at every possible opportunity, and that didn't always seem the case. We spent this long without talking about the Jaylen Brown 3. My apologies, listeners. Sorry, we're a little rattled after a crazy game, but so they inbounds goes out of bounds, Boston ball, Brown on the right corner, double pump, no Siakam foul. And by the way, if you're Indiana, it's a miracle that Jaylen Brown has the ball with under 5 seconds left, because the odds of him making 3 straight free throws, if you've watched the Celtics for the last 7 years, he made 2 in the fourth quarter, but what were the odds of him making 3 free throws to tie the game with the Garden crowd completely tense, having a heart attack? I'm going to say like 10%, but Siakam, for whatever reason, they don't foul, and he makes a crazy shot. And the thing is, in the fourth quarter, at least, Jaylen was the one who kind of seemed, if you didn't know anything about the Celtics, you would have thought he was the best player, right? But that's the great thing about the Jays, is they can kind of pass back and forth. Tonight it was Jaylen. But biggest shot of Jaylen's career? I'm trying to think of a bigger one.
I'd say so.
Yeah, I don't remember him having a lot of like buzzer beaters or.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider the stakes for this team, 60-plus win team, favorites in the East, like they should be in the finals. They've had a fairly easy path so far. they should be there. So I think for Jaylen Brown, yeah, that was the biggest shot of his career that I can remember off the top of my head.
Lifted up Tatum a little bit, and then Tatum.
And then Tatum, he finished
does
late.
the rest.
Because you're right. Like if that didn't happen, the conversation would right now be about, well, Tatum struggled throughout the fourth quarter. He really only hit one shot in the fourth.
Why aren't they using him better?
Yes,
like what can they do differently? And then there would have been another conversation about, are we sure Tyrese Halliburton is the best player of the series? You can almost imagine the first take segments as they have the subjects on the bottom. It would have been like, does Jason Tatum need to do more? Next segment, is Tyrese Halliburton the best player in the series? And we'd hit all the beats. I thought Tatum once again had an incredible all-around game, but the three-point shooting, this has been the story now for 2 years. He's not always lights out from three. It's been the one flaw in his game. And when he missed that three at the top of the key, I was like, oh my God. I mean, we've also watched way too much of this team. And I think for the fans from the outside, probably listening to people who follow this Boston team talking about them, we have to sound like the most entitled fucking assholes on the planet, right? But we've been watching these guys for 7 straight years. And the more you watch anything, the more you see the flaws and the more you see the glass half empty stuff. They did a lot of good stuff in the OT. I mean, how many points did they end up? They had 16 points in the OT, right?
16 to 11.
They got a lot of good and they hadn't scored in the first minute, so basically all in the last 4 minutes. But considering they don't have Porzingis, and Al Horford was a guy who was playing 15, 16, 19 minutes a game for the first 5 months of the season, and now they're leaning on him to the
40.
point that he played 40 tonight.
40 minutes.
It's not the whole Celtics team. So if anything goes off, it feels like it's realistic for anybody to come in and beat them, right? Did you feel like, I didn't feel like this was going to be a sweep. I mean, I thought it was going to go at least 6. There was a bet on FanDuel. The series would go 6 or more. It was plus 120. And I was like, this series, I'd be shocked if it didn't go 6. Did you feel like this was going to be a blowout? What was your semi prediction for it?
I had Pacers losing in 5 games. So Celtics winning this one in 5. That's what I said to Verno on the mismatch on Monday night. And I started to wonder if it would end up going 6 or even 7 in the middle of tonight's game. But Indiana had to have this one. So I'm not going to move from Indiana losing in 5.
Well, this happens sometimes with game ones. It's we didn't win and now we basically have to win 5 of the 7 games, right? This is the Suns versus the Spurs in 2008. Where that crazy Duncan hits the 3, goes into double overtime, and the Suns, it gets snatched away from them. And then it's just like, not only was that a horrible loss, but now we basically have to win 4 of the next 6 when we just won a game. So now it's basically a 5-2 series. Bright side for Indiana, though, the pace was really good for them. I thought they especially they were hunting Horford in the fourth quarter and just like just trying to go at him with whoever. And everybody seemed really comfortable. And I think that Knicks series toughened them up because there were some moments, especially in the second half, when it felt like, all right, time for you to lose your composure, young team that hasn't been in the Eastern Finals. And they just kept making plays. I thought Siakam, there's in the fourth quarter, the experience that he has, plus Halliburton just being unafraid to the point of a fault. But those 2 guys seem to lift the team up. And then it just kind of went sideways the last 2 minutes, unfortunately, for them.
Yeah, I mean, the Siakam Halliburton 2-man game, they've been super productive together in the postseason together. Like if Siakam's screening for Halliburton, they score 1.18 points per pick and roll together, according to Synergy. They're putting up big numbers. They obviously exploited Boston tonight. Siakam hitting that little, shot around the free throw line, attacking mismatches, using his size. Like the Siakam versatility. That's why I felt, teams like the Kings, some of these teams out there should have been going at him. Granted, he kind of steered his way to the Pacers. That's where he wanted to go.
Oh, you're talking about acquiring him in February.
Yeah. I just think Siakam was kind of one of those swing players because of how he works next to some of these perimeter creators like Nembhard, like Halliburton. He's just so versatile because he can handle himself and he can screen for you. He can spot up. He had a play, I think, end of the third quarter, where he kind of stripped Jaylen Brown and Brown didn't get back on defense and Siakam just sprinted past him. He just does all the little things Siakam does. And I thought that was on display tonight, but ultimately it's like you said, it worked. until it didn't. When Indiana, turnovers were an issue for them in those runs in the first quarter when Boston went up 12-0. It was an issue at the middle of the third quarter when Boston built a 13-point lead before they, blew that after taking Tatum out of the game. And then it became an issue late fourth quarter and into overtime. So there was really 3 stretches where the Pacers just got incredibly sloppy. And it was those stretches that I thought completely lost them the game. And Halliburton ultimately, though, I mean, he had a good overall game. I don't want to knock him too much, but I thought he really choked it away last 2 minutes of regulation, and then he wasn't that good in overtime
with the ball
either.
handling.
Yeah, it was so
if you
sloppy.
just look at the box score, knowing nothing, and I told you the Pacers had 21 turnovers, and then the Pacers were at a 30-10 free throw attempt disadvantage. You'd have been like, oh my God, they lost by 38.
Yes.
No, they didn't.
You would have thought it'd be the 20-point blowout in favor of Boston like you thought it would be tonight.
Well, part of the problem was they shot the fucking lights out in the first half. What were they in the first half? I had this written down somewhere.
I think they were over 60%.
Yeah. And they were just on a heater. Halliburton made 2 end of the quarter shots. The second one was just absurd. But I was on a Celtics text thread, and one of my friends was like, we should be up 7. We're up 1. Like, this is, they just got 6 free points there. And then they took the lead near the end. And it felt like they were one Halliburton dagger 3 away from the game being over. The crowd was super tense. I can't wait to, I hope maybe my dad got carried out. I don't know. That was a heart attack special.
Yeah, you hear from him yet?
Got to check in and make sure he texted me. Jesus. The crowd has a weird relationship with this team, because when things go a little sideways, you feel the tension not only when you're sitting there, but even you could feel it on the TV. Mm-hmm. And there's been different kinds of Celtic teams over the years. It kind of depends on who your best player is, where you can be super confident, or you're kind of like walking on eggshells because you don't have as much talent. This team, when things start going sideways, there's just a feeling of like, oh no, oh God, oh, it's going to be one of these games where people can recognize the signs even when there's like 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Do I sound like an insane person, or do you understand what I'm saying?
No, because you've seen this story time and time again, whatever the iteration of the team was over the years, whether it was the IT Celtics with super young, supporting cast, or the Kyrie Celtics, it hasn't made a difference. The Gordon Hayward Celtics, it hasn't made any difference over the years. It's been a lot of the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is not having that one guy when everything gets super stagnant that you're just like, I know that guy can get a bucket. Tatum's the closest to it, but if we were doing playoff, like, who do you trust when you're down 3 with a minute left? It was interesting. Joe Maz went with the White Tatum pick and roll a few times when they really needed a basket, which was the play a lot of people have been crying for basically the whole season. All right, Joe Maz. So Indiana is delighted that the Celtics are not using Tatum as a small ball 5, I'm guessing. Like, they were leaving game 1 going, man, they didn't do it yet. Thank God. No Brissett in this series, and basically just Horford and Cornet as one of those two as the center at all times. The Celtics bench, especially in the second half when they had Hauser out there, looked really flimsy. And it's easy to forget, like, this Porzingis, when he was out there, those are 32 minutes a game that they have to kind of sprinkle elsewhere. So Al Horford gets some, Cornet gets more. I said this Sunday night, so I don't feel like this is me revising history after game 1. I don't understand why they didn't use the Cleveland game to experiment with some small ball lineups and just some stuff, knowing that whether it was Indiana or New York, once Mitchell Robinson went out, there was going to be a small ball lineup. It was either going to be Toppin at the 5 or it was going to be Precious Achiuwa at the 5. So they didn't use the Cleveland series for that at all. They played Al 39 minutes a game basically down the stretch there. And you get to this Indiana series, guess what? They kind of need to figure out a small ball lineup. Now we're headed to game 2. Is Joe Maz just this stubborn? What is he doing?
So you want to see Tatum on Turner at some point?
Or so Brissett is just unplayable? Like, that one's it? I mean, there's no 3 guards with the Jays. We can't see that lineup for 4 minutes. I don't get it, KSC. Because I think Indiana felt like there were specific moments that Boston lineups were out there where they're like, here's our chance to make a run right here. Oh, Tatum's out of the game. Oh, they're going to play the Cornet Hauser together. And I don't know how they fix that without kind of dipping into the deeper part of the bench. Even if it's Tillman, I don't know if Tillman would have made much of a difference defensively, but the Brissett thing, I just don't get. I don't understand why he doesn't play.
Yeah, which is why, like you said, you would have liked to have seen that, in the prior 2 rounds
Yeah,
to see some of that experimentation.
Get him some legs.
Yeah, and I mean, the way in which Horford's been attacked over and over and over throughout these playoffs, and then in game 1 against the Pacers, the Celtics have the worst, pick and roll efficiency on defense in the entire league so far in the playoffs. Obviously, much different story in the regular season, but in the postseason, they're 16th and pick and roll efficiency on defense. So I think for Mazzulla moving forward in the series, I do think it's valuable to have Tatum play the 5 for a short stretch. If Indiana finds other ways to exploit that with Turner, I think personally, if you have Turner posting up instead of pick and popping at over 40% from 3 in the playoffs right now, he's been knocked down for 2 years straight now. I think it's advantageous for Boston if you're kind of force-feeding post-ups to Miles Turner rather than the pick and pop. So I think it's worth trying. And Horford also could become more effective if he's not asked to play 40 minutes in a game. He's almost 40 years old at this point. If you're playing Horford for 25 minutes instead of 35 every night, he could be better in those minutes instead of being stretched so thin over the course of time. But ultimately, doesn't it come down to more than anything else, just the return of Kristaps Porzingis? He's the X factor for this team. He's the guy that they need to have any chance in the finals against Minnesota or Dallas. They need Kristaps Porzingis because of the offense that he provides with the ability to beat switches, the spacing that he provides as a shooter, the screen and rolling. He's such a versatile offensive threat. And then defensively, all this talk about Horford getting attacked. Well, Porzingis is a very good rim protector, whether he's involved in the action directly or he's the guy helping off ball and causing havoc around the rim. So I think he is the key to everything here. He was ever since he was acquired last summer, and that's still true now. I don't think they need him to get through the Pacers. I think they can win this series keeping him on ice, but they do need him against the Timberwolves or the Mavericks in the finals.
If that Jaylen Brown shot didn't go in, would you say they need him against the Pacers? I think I might have felt differently about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. I still would have picked Boston in the series.
I gotta say the teams seem pretty close. Like that, Jaylen got interviewed after the game, and he's like, he had an interesting quote about Tatum, where he finally talked in the overtime. He said, and Tatum finally got it going.
Yeah,
I don't think he meant it as a dig. It was just, I think he was like saying what we all saw, but then he basically was like, I'm not happy with how we played. I didn't think we played that well, but I test watching the game. Thought the Pacers, from a talent standpoint, seemed pretty comfortable against them. I didn't feel like there was a talent to spare at all. I didn't understand the line for the series at all. It was the Celtics were 9-1 favorites on FanDuel. Even the series going 6 games was plus money. You look at the line tonight was double digits, and I just didn't really totally understand it because of what you said. There's the KP Celtics, and then there's the no KP Celtics. And the no KP Celtics have a lot more variance game to game. I talked about Horford before, about how he was a 15 to 20 minute game guy. I mean, technically he's not, because if you look at his game log, he's in like the 26 range. But that was because they would rest him and play him basically twice a week, right? And when he played, and a lot of times it was when Porzingis wasn't playing. But ultimately, like when they're a playoff team, when KP's back, Horford's probably playing 20 minutes a game max. The fact that they're putting the miles on him that they're putting on him, and his shot he was 3 for 12 from 3 tonight, 5 for 15. Never good when your big guy is 5 for 15 field goals. But I wonder, is part of Indiana's game plan, not just tonight, but for the whole series, being like, yeah, fucking let Al Horford beat us. Knock yourself out, Al. Because that's what it seemed like tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I do think so. I mean, Horford on both ends of the floor seems to be the guy that they're choosing to not worry about as much on offense, and then choosing to attack him relentlessly when he's on defense. And it's a pretty good strategy for Indiana, obviously. I mean, like he's the guy who's been attacked throughout the postseason for Boston's defense.
And they have the right kind of team to
for
you know,
sure.
a bunch of different guards that can drive to the rim.
Yeah, Halliburton, Nembhard, McConnell, it doesn't really make a difference. All three of those guys have different styles too, to attack it in different types of ways. And even Siakam, for that matter, with his versatility as well involved in those actions, whether it's as the handler or as the screener. So, I mean, I think ultimately, I mean, your point about, it brings it back to your point about using Tatum at the 5 sometimes. I think it's a tool worth experimenting with for Boston, because even if you, like you talked about, they should have used it against Cleveland to prep for this series potentially, or if it were against the Knicks, but they also could use it as prep for potentially against, let's say it's Dallas next round.
Right.
Dallas should get Maxi Kleber back. They do like to go small at times. Boston might want to have that tool at some point, depending on how a certain game is going. I don't think it's something that they should be going to often, but it's a tool you want to have for in the moment that you feel like you need it, or if you want to dictate.
It's a great way to put it.
So I think for the Celtics, it's worth going to at some point in this series. And plus, like you said, Horford playing every other night at this point, giving him a little bit of a breather in these moments too.
Well, he's going to get worse as the playoffs go along. It's just, if they're going to, because now we're every other night. They put 40 on him tonight. They got to play again on Thursday. Indiana's younger. They're fresher.
They're fast.
Turner's playing about as confidently as I can remember from him. Remember, it felt like last year for 4 months, it felt like anybody could go grab him. He was in that Clint Capella, Gafford, in that range of just centers you could go get if you wanted to take somebody on your cap. But I don't know. I'm still kind of in a dark place, even after a great win. I just don't know if I trust the coach. Well, I'm just going to be honest. I don't know if I trust his ability to read a series or a game ahead of time. And it feels like by game 4, they'll be making some of these adjustments. That's the part that really Carlisle just had this team so figured out heading into game 1. He knew like the 3 things. I'm going to put Siakam at the foul line. When they put their bench out, I'm going to attack this. I'm going to unleash Toppin when he goes in. I'm going to keep trying to hunt Horford, especially in the fourth quarter. Like he was saving that a little bit, because it wasn't like they're hunting Horford the whole game. They're picking their spots. And then fourth quarter, they really started going after him.
That's what the data to prepare,
Yeah. Right. This is the game this is the throwaway game where you just had this crazy 7-game series and this emotional win on a Sunday. But
one of the things I didn't like at the end of the Celtics were up 92-79, middle of the third quarter, like 2 minutes left in the third quarter, something like that, after their big 18-4 run to take a lead. And Tatum was awesome in that stretch, picking on Nembhard, using his size. Like he was excellent. Like Mazzulla, even during that stretch at one point, used zone for a single possession and just completely mucked up the Pacers offense on that play. But then he pulled Tatum with 2:20 or something like that left in the third quarter, and I felt like in that moment maybe you try to stomp on their throat and extend that lead even more and keep playing through Tatum and slightly move away from your preferred rotations in that stretch. And then Indiana ends up being down only 1 at the end of the third quarter. Little stuff like that's annoying with Mazzulla.
46 minutes tonight for Tatum. The backcourt on the Celtics. Drew Holiday played 48 minutes, was 10 for 16, and put up a 28, 7, and 8. And I thought, it's rare you see at the pro level with a really good point guard, somebody getting harassed into a turnover at midcourt. And I think it happened twice in this game.
Incredible defense by him.
And then that was a really good Jaylen Brown game too. 10 for 20. I mean, he had his typical 3 terrible turnovers that he just can't have a normal turnover. It has to be like one of the 5 worst turnovers you've ever seen in your life. That's every turnover for him. But I thought he was really good. And what if you haven't watched the Celtics a lot this year, people listening, there's what he did tonight, he was doing all year, like sensing like, oh, Tatum doesn't have it for this quarter. Oh, we're in a little bit of a funk. I think I can take this over. And sometimes, he tries to outkick his own coverage, but a lot of times he makes big plays, gets big rebounds. He's always around the basket. I thought the Celtics seemed a little more physical down the stretch around the rim. I don't really have an explanation for why the free throws were like 24-3 at one point. Pacers had 3 free throw attempts in the fourth quarter. Just watching it, not caring, whatever. Like, did you feel like it was slanted, or why weren't the Pacers getting calls?
Well, tonight in the game, just to throw the stats out there behind it, the Celtics attempted 28% of their shots at the rim. The Pacers attempted 27% of their shots at the rim.
Oof.
So it's not as if Indiana wasn't getting an equal amount of shots at the rim as Boston. I did feel like the officiating was slanted in Boston's way, but Indiana also in the half court doesn't get to the rim as much as Boston does. Boston still isn't a lot either, but a lot of those at-rim chances for the Pacers were in transition after getting stops on defense. And so I think that's part of it. We'll play it into it. I have to rewatch all the plays, all the finishes at the rim, and all the drawn fouls. But I think it was slightly favored in Boston's way, but not like anything super significant that I'd be, furious right now if I were a Pacers fan.
Rick Carlisle said after the game, "This loss is totally on me. With 10 seconds left, we should have called timeout and advanced the ball."
Wow.
I guess he has to say that. He wasn't going to be like, "This loss is on Tyrese Halliburton."
Yeah.
I don't know why he lost the ball.
Why'd you dribble the ball off your knee?
To give them 3. I will say, though, I know that wasn't an awesome Halliburton, crunch time. But the fearlessness he has and the joy that he plays with is really fun to watch. And I'm glad that, there's a moment during that Knicks series in Game 5 where it was like, man.
The game made 8 shots, 9 shots or something like that?
Yeah, it's just like you're doing like the poor man's Karl Malone routine, but I thought he rallied back. He was awesome against a depleted Knicks team in Game 7. And then he had some good the thing about if you're going to beat a team that's better than you, and we think Boston's better, you got to be unafraid, and you got to be unafraid of a game like this. This team was unafraid. Neesmith was another one. I thought Neesmith was excellent and really was unafraid of either Brown or Tatum, and just was like trying, you knew he was going to foul out if the game went in overtime.
Former teammates for him as well.
Oh, a little revenge game.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Zach Lowe, he texted me today, actually, we were just bragging about our Neesmith Island, like those little shacks we bought on Neesmith Island 4 years ago. Now it's like, the island's in demand.
Up, way up.
Yeah. There's been some losing. Romeo Langford Island, I finally had to just kind of throw that in the garbage, but Neesmith. Did you like Neesmith when he was on the Celtics?
I liked him more in the draft than when he was actually on the Celtics. He was just okay with Boston. He didn't come along too much. Kind of just
threw him in the corner and
Yeah.
Told him not to do anything, basically.
Yeah, with Indiana, he's still a 3-and-D guy. It's just he's figured it out. He's figured out the shot. He's got a role on defense. And you're right, like he plays with no fear. And I think that's kind of true for this entire Indiana team. The one thing I will say about Halliburton, I know he had a good game overall, 25 points, 8 of 18.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just feel like he hunts threes too much. Like he is such a good mid-range shooter.
Yeah.
He's a knockdown mid-range shooter. There's just certain times I in that overtime and the end three-pointers I've mentioned a couple times at the end of regulation where I'm like, you don't need to rush it all the time. You don't need to always hunt that three-pointer. You don't need to be James Harden. Learn from his mistakes in the past and sometimes look for the easy mid-range shot. Like Nembhard had that like baseline jumper, right? Like in mid-range, like Siakam to pull up. Like Halliburton's an over 50% guy for mid-range. He just doesn't take it that often. And I wish there's times where you take 14 out of your 18 shots from beyond the arc. I'd like to see him use the mid-range more often. I think he'd be able to get more shots per game as well if he looked for the mid-range instead of just being all threes, all layups all the time. And then playmaking, he's tremendous. But I think adding the mid-range is the next element for him to really become a top 10 level player and not just one of the 20, 25 best guys.
It was very similar to the Tatum conversation, right? That we were having like a year, 2 years ago about why won't he shoot foul line jumpers? Mm-hmm. Why won't he dip into his bag a little bit more? Why is he so happy doing these step back threes? Drake May was at the game tonight, Cassie.
Yeah, looks sharp. Great to see him.
David Ortiz, Big Poppy was at the game. I do feel like when Big Poppy's at the game, I feel like good things are going to happen. I mean, that guy literally changed the course of Red Sox history and maybe even my life to some small degree. And you just feel like, oh, Ortiz is here. Like he single-handedly won the 2013 World Series. I feel good about this.
He just puts a big smile on my face anytime I see him.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's it'll never go away either. He could be 80. I'm like, oh, Ortiz is here. So you thought Celtics in 5. What do you think now?
Celtics in 5. I'll stick to it. You're still sticking to Celtics in 6?
I thought the Pacers were going to win game 2 and game 4, and it was going to be 2-2 after 4 games, and then the Celtics were just going to blow them out in game. It would be one of those series, but we had to get super tense about it in game 4. Oh my God, are the Celtics going to blow this? For them to lose this, for the Celtics to even have this go to 7 now after stealing this, right? And then game 2's 2 nights from now. I do have the thing that worries me is the Miles on Horford and the fact that there's really no alternative, because the Cornet, he's up and down to begin with.
Tillman, that's what they got him for. He's that versatile, switchable guy. They just don't use him.
The Joe, this is like a Celtics coach. I'm going way back, but the 88 Celtics. Were you born in 88 yet?
No, I was born in 90.
Casey Jones just let Reggie Lewis just rot on the bench for the entire playoffs, and there was no internet for me to complain about this. I had no outlets really at all, except for my dad and for a couple people at like Dunkin' Donuts. And he just wouldn't play him. And I really think if he'd played him, I think they could have potentially beaten the Pistons. I don't know if we'll feel this way about the Celtics this round, but it is frustrating to be like, dude, you had the whole season. You won 64 games. You won the conference by 12 games. Like, why didn't you see a little bit more of what you have with some of these guys so you're prepared for every situation once we get to the playoffs?